Hi everyone, and welcome to today's ChannelFutures webcast, the SMB Survival Guide, Securing Your Organization Against Cyber Attack, sponsored by Carbonite. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please hit the Help widget on your player console to receive assistance in solving common issues. If at any time you're having audio difficulties or issues with advancing of the slides, please hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. Today's web seminar is being recorded and will be available on demand for 12 months starting tomorrow. You'll receive an email when it is ready. And with that, let's meet today's speakers. Nick Cavalancia is a ChannelFutures contributor and has over 25 years of enterprise IT experience. Tim Sheahen is a sales director at Webroot and has been in the technology sales and consulting field for over 20 years with a strong emphasis on security. And Jamie Zajac is a senior director of product at Carbonite with over 10 years of experience designing, implementing, and maintaining high availability solutions for small and large enterprises. And with that, the floor is now yours, Nick.
Thank you very much, Jen. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's webcast. This is a really good topic. I'm going to sort of introduce this a little bit and wind things up for Jamie and Tim. I've sort of entitled my sub-presentation, if you will, Cybersecurity is a services must, and SMBs, that is your customers, they already know it. I'm assuming that most of you have some kind of security probably already woven into your services. If you're doing RMM for the sake of argument, maybe you have antivirus on the endpoints, that kind of thing, but you really haven't made an effort to actually look at how do I implement a security service. And the things I'm going to talk about today over the next, I only have about 2 or 3 slides, but things I'm going to talk about apply both to your customers and they equally apply to your own organization as well. I want to start off with a couple of stats here that kind of demonstrate why the SMB themselves, they are ready. This is the part where that and they know it part and the title, my title slide there, where they're ready for cybersecurity services. Maybe not all of them. We all know that some cases when you ask a customer, I used to own an MSP myself many years ago in a former life. But anytime you're asking a customer to take on new services, there's always a why do I need this? Why is it important? And there's always some kind of pushback because if they feel like you're just asking for money, then they don't want to part with it. But if there's a legitimate need and they know that there's a legitimate need, it's certainly a little easier to sell. So the first stat comes from the National Cybersecurity Alliance. You see here on the average, a little over a quarter of SMBs have experienced cyber attacks in the last 12 months. To break it down a little bit, the smaller businesses, so less than, I think it's 50 seats, if I remember correctly, it's 11% of them, and mid-size, anything kind of above that, was 44%, and the average ended up being about 28, I think, based on the number of each of those different groups represented in the report. So there's certainly at least a quarter of your potential clients or your existing customers that have experienced cyber attacks to some degree that hopefully should be ready here. Another report that I saw from Tech Isle, they have the 2019 top SMB business issues, IT priorities, and IT challenges. The number 4 IT challenge was the issue of security. In the mix of a lot of other ones, but keep in mind, 1, it wasn't number 10, it's number 4, and 2, there's a million other priorities that could be coming in, challenges that could be coming into play. So security is definitely something at the top and the forefront of an SMB's mind. And then the last one here is, this is kind of an interesting one, particularly from your perspective, because like I started this slide talking about, a lot of times SMBs just think you're trying to get them to part with their money, but in some cases, and what I'm going to show you here in this next bit of data from the Hiscox 2019 Cyber Readiness Report, SMBs actually have money budgeted. On the average, the SMBs have money budgeted towards cybersecurity. You can look at this table, it's just a screenshot from the report, and you can see even the very small business has some kind of budget. On the average, it is $7,000. Now, whether you agree with that exact number or not, I don't think it's entirely the issue. I think more so, if nothing else, what you take from this particular quick graph that I've got up here is the fact that you do have even very small SMBs, the smallest of them, and moving up, of course, to much larger enterprises, all have some kind of idea that they've got to spend something on cybersecurity services. So that's really important. Now, for you guys, I want you to be thinking about what SMBs need as part of some kind of cybersecurity offering. It needs to have what I consider a layered approach. It should be one where you've got multiple different kinds of technology that in sum total address the problem of cybersecurity from different angles so that you create this layer. If one doesn't stop it, the next one will is the intent. And it looks a little something like this. Is a graphic I've been using for the last 2 years or so. And the idea is I've broken it down into 7 different aspects, if you will. You have the perimeter, which is sort of the logical perimeter. That meaning it used to be the firewall, and everybody else was inside the firewall. Now the logical perimeter is one of your laptops over at a coffee shop, connecting directly to the internet. So you have to think about that kind of perimeter for your customers, the users, and protecting them from themselves to a degree. The endpoints, and that's where you start thinking about things like antivirus, endpoint protection, and so on. Identity comes into play, might be identity and access management, secure sign-on solutions, those kinds of things. Protecting privileged accounts, so that might be least privilege, even zero trust privilege, the privileged access management type of solutions, that kind of thing. You're protecting applications, which typically we start getting now into things like looking at user behavior and who's accessing what applications and things like that, and then ultimately data. Typically, the MSP focuses kind of on these top 3, because if I can stop an attack, if I can thwart it here, then no one will get any farther. And this is also one of the easier areas for you to focus on if you're just getting into cybersecurity and you'd say, well, Nick, I'm not an expert, so how do I get started? You'd start here. You'd start at these 3 here. But if you can, you want to be thinking about in the long run, a cybersecurity service offering should be looking at protecting more than that and looking at all of these layers. So to kind of quickly, kind of continue this on, it's got to be that layered approach, like I said. You really should be paying attention to the tactics that are being used by threat actors, by cyber criminal organizations, whatever term you want to use, the bad guys. I love that one. That's actually my favorite. But you have to look at what they're doing and then come up with responses that are going to address that. So if, for example, phishing is still very huge. It's one of the #1 ways that ransomware gets in, that still business email compromise gets in, malware attacks, and so on. So you might say, well, I got to figure out a way that I want to make sure that endpoints are protected against phishing. Good. See, at least you're thinking about what's the bad guy doing, what do I do in response to protect, prevent, and then detect if necessary and respond to attacks. Remember that your customers, they have no expertise to do this themselves. I think there's actually a little bit about that in the slide deck today. I think there's another reference to the Hiscox report. We talk about how ready organizations are. SMBs are not. The majority of them have no idea what they're going to do, and so they're relying on you as their trusted partner to not just manage their infrastructure, to maintain the operations of their environment. They're looking for you to also secure their environment, and they're at this point, they're ready to spend money on it. And I want you to keep in mind that you don't necessarily even have to have expertise either, because you have vendors like Carbonite, who's sponsoring this today. They have vendors at your disposal. They can do a couple things for you. They're going to give you enterprise caliber tools. So rather than you having to go out and buy it yourself, you're being handed. It's one of the things I'm really envious of you. When I had my MSP, we didn't have all these cool MSP-centric tools. We had to just use the same tools everybody else had. We were hoping there was like a small business edition kind of a thing. And so you've got these great enterprise caliber tools that are available at a very price point to make it easy for you to deliver a service that is profitable for you and still cost savings for your customer. And then they're also, in a lot of cases, offering enterprise caliber expertise in the form of services, training, partnering with you, and that kind of thing. So if you're thinking about, I want to get into cybersecurity, but I don't really exactly know how I'm supposed to do that yet because I'm not an expert at it, the good news is you don't have to be. Not entirely. You got to know more than your customer, of course. And for the most part, I think most of you are savvy enough. You've got a fair degree of expertise, even if you don't think you do. And then it's just a matter of trying to kind of round that out by leveraging the partners that you choose from a software perspective to partner with you to make you successful. So that's my kind of intro to this topic here. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Tim and Jamie, and then when we're done, we're going to take Q&A. So if you've got questions about anything covered in today's presentation, stick them in the Q&A box. We'll be sure to answer those. And with that, Tim and Jamie, the floor is now yours.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate that intro. As Nick mentioned, my name is Tim Sheahen. This whole combo of Webroot and Carbonite. I actually come from the Webroot side. Actually, I've been with Webroot for over 15 years at this point, so very familiar with the security space and have watched this security landscape evolve quite a bit in 15 years. If you remember back in the day, it was spyware. You guys can remember all that stuff. But prior to actually working for Webroot, I actually worked for a managed service provider, and I don't think they called it managed service providers at the time. I think they called ourselves IT outsourcers. But I do have a very unique perspective on the concerns, what keeps MSPs up at night, how they think about protecting their customers and keeping their customers. So today we're going to talk a bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in that cybersecurity landscape, particularly around your customers. So those would be the small to medium businesses that are out there. And the news is not entirely great, but that's what we're here for, right? That's what we're talking about. And we're going to talk about some basic strategies and how to think a bit holistically on how to attack this and build a security profile for your customers, and essentially how we can start to leverage the Carbonite and Webroot solutions to help you do that and do it easily. And that's so I'll cover some of the security pieces and this protection piece, and then I'll go ahead and pass it off to Jamie to cover the resilience piece, which is more the data protection and recovery piece, right? So what are we seeing today? What does the threat landscape look today? These things are probably no surprise to you, right? You know that these large enterprises are still getting a hit on a regular basis. We're still seeing very large breaches happening, cyber attacks, whether it's individuals, whether it's groups, whether it's state-sponsored folks that are going after it. And the big payouts that these guys have to have in order to stay in business and to satisfy their customers. And you might be looking at this going, hey, that's great, but I don't manage Capital One. I don't manage Equifax. And the scary part, and Nick kind of talked about it a bit, is that the SMBs are now kind of the new target. And the Ponemon Institute actually did their own study, and they just released it about a month ago. And their stats, their survey is a bit more scarier. Now their stats were based on U.S. SMBs only, but they're saying that about 76% of SMBs have experienced some kind of cyber attack in the past year. Now that may differ from what Nick was showing, but really what we need to be paying attention to is the shift, right? Because prior to that, about 2 years prior to that, it was about 55% according to what their results were. So the bullseye is shifting towards your customers' backs. The thing that's not changing, that's, again, not the greatest news, is that about 45%, so nearly 50% of SMBs feel that their IT security posture is ineffective. Now, that's not good for them, but that is good for you. That's opportunity. But that hasn't really changed. They still feel that they are targets. They know they're targets. So to allude to what Nick was saying, they're ready. They know they're exposed, and they don't have the resources, so they're looking for help. About 40% of those that were surveyed have absolutely no incident response plan at all. So if they do actually get hit, if they're attacked, there's no plan. And that's where you talk about whether a company stays in business or not. So why are the SMBs the new targets? Well, you put yourself in the shoes of the bad guys out there for a bit. Now, you could spend a lot of expertise, you could spend a lot of resources, a lot of time into the large enterprise, and your payday, if you hit, is going to be big, but your success rate is probably going to be pretty low. So let's go after what we feel are the easier targets. Right? These are the SMBs. These are your customers. They feel like they have lower levels of defense. They feel like they have an inexperienced staff on hand. They don't know security. So they don't have that expertise. And think about it from your customer's perspective. They're trying to get a business off the ground. They're trying to grow a business. So they may be cutting corners here and there. They may not be putting all the money into security. They should be, but they're relying on some older technologies, some insufficient technologies to protect them. And there's not typically anybody walking around unless you're managing them, making sure that their machines are up to date, making sure their OSs are up to date, their Adobe solutions are up to date, and the guys that we're seeing the successful attacks, especially around things like ransomware, are the guys that are the SMBs. They feel that these guys are less resilient. They can't recover their data, or their data is more exposed. So they have their data backups like hooked up to their domain, and so these attacks can corrupt their data backups. And so, if a ransomware attack happens in a large enterprise, it's a speed bump. They're going to be able to recover that very quickly. The one big difference between large enterprises and small businesses that we're seeing is that, part of the day-to-day with a large enterprise is security awareness training. They're trying to heighten the awareness of their individuals for a couple reasons. Obviously, to make sure they're not falling victim to some kind of cyber attack, which could leave them exposed by $500 million. But the other piece is that there's compliance regulations as well to make sure that we're adhering to different compliance regulations, and that's not yet trickling down to the SMB level yet. They're still exposed. They still have to adhere to compliance regulations, but we're not seeing that come down to that level quite yet. So that's what the bad guys are seeing. That's why they're saying, hey, these are easy targets. So why need protection? Well, I mean, some of this is obvious, right? We're talking about the first thing that you need to protect is your data. So, if all those companies I listed before, those large enterprises, those guys are all still in business. The Better Business Bureau actually did a survey not so long ago, again to SMBs around cybersecurity, and they asked a very simple question. And they said, hey, if there was a complete breach, a complete loss of data to your organization, would you remain profitable? And only 1 out of every 3 companies said they would actually remain profitable. They would be profitable. In a month, only half of those guys said they would remain profitable. So as a small to medium business, you're not going to be able to run in the red for very long without going out of business. And, like those guys aren't going to make the news, right? That it's going to be the larger enterprises that's going to make the news. So protecting the data, making sure that we're protecting against outside hackers, but also malicious insiders as well, making sure we're doing the right things around protecting against infections, ransomware, and viruses, what have you. But there's another piece as well, a productivity piece, a component, that if an infection happens in let's say a 10-person company, and it takes down one person's machine, that's 10% of their machines that are down for an entire day or potentially multiple days. So there's a productivity hit there. If that happens again in a large enterprise, it doesn't make a difference. And lastly is the adherence to compliance regulations. So regardless of whether you're a large enterprise or whether you're a small business, if you're taking credit card transactions, if your customers are holding on to healthcare information, they need to adhere to these compliance on a regular basis. So making sure that they're adding the security levels, security layers, and educating the users to make sure they're adhering to those regulations is important as well. The world that we see today, there is no one safe. There's not a single business out there that's not being targeted out there. What we're seeing is the large enterprises are still continuing to get hit, and that growth is happening year over year. That's not going to go away anytime soon. But in the SMB space specifically, it is a massive growth, and the targets have shifted. And we're starting to see whether you're a 10-person company, whether you're a 100-person company, whether you're a 250-person company, you are exposed. And you can see from this is that the growth is happening more so on the smaller guys than anything else. And these guys they know it, they're feeling it. To the next point, they know that they're exposed. They know that they're, and some degrees they're starting to get paranoid because the media is starting to pick up on some of these attacks in Texas that we had. Those would be considered SMBs. And these guys are not, they're not experts. The vast majority, 74% of SMBs, consider themselves cyber-ready novices. So that's where you guys actually come in to help. So when you talk about how to begin to think about protecting your customers, where to begin? And you have to come up with some kind of holistic view of your customers and what you're going to be able to accomplish with the resources that they have to spend. And the nice thing about it is the NSA had built this what they call this defense in-depth approach a while back. Originally, it was designed to not prevent anybody from actually getting in or a cyber attack. It's to try to delay them as much as possible. But it is a true to form method of which to start your security posture, right? To start building your strategy. And the basis behind it is, to go back to what Nick was saying, is build those multiple layers, right? Making sure that you're, and their approach is, hey, what are the 4 core components that we need to identify? And what are all the specific vectors of attacks that can be leveraged against those 4 components? Those 4 components that you need to be protected is obviously data, network, device, and the users, the people. And so how to leverage those technologies together, those layers, in order to make sure that you're protecting those 4 core components. Now, the difference between your customers and yourselves versus large enterprises, the types of solutions and essentially the quantity of solutions. A large enterprise is probably going to have a lot more layers of solutions or technologies to be able to protect those 4 core components, where a managed service provider is going to look to have as many of those layers as they can in as few solutions as they can. Because you understand, we know that MSPs don't want to live security all day. They want to make sure their customers are protected, but in as few resources and essentially costs as possible. So where to begin? Well, the very, very core basics of that approach, if you think about it, you have to have a very secure next generation endpoint security solution. Vast majority of cyber attacks, over 90% of cyber attacks, come from some kind of malware infection. And you have to have the latest and greatest. The security landscape has shifted so much so in the last few years that the vast majority of infections we're seeing is 0-day. They're polymorphic malware, meaning that when malware gets released, it changes as it hits each machine ever so slightly. That way the traditional signature guys can't pick that stuff up. So you have to look for an endpoint solution that is leveraging next-gen technology. When I mean next-gen, I mean leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify 0-day threats. But we all know that there is no perfect solution out there. There's no such thing as 100% prevention. That's where that resiliency piece starts to come in, to make sure that you have a strong backup that not only can you completely recover your data if something gets through, but you can do it quickly so there's less downtime. So let's talk about what Webroot's doing from the protection side to help you guys out. And if you're familiar with Webroot at all, our flagship technology is our endpoint security solution. But and you'll see over the course of the next few slides, we are incorporating that defense in-depth approach through how we build out our solutions and how they intertwine and how they talk to each other and how we're trying to protect your customers. A lot of people actually don't know, with our endpoint security solution, we were actually the first ones to make the leap to next generation. And what I mean by that, it's not just cloud-based. It is starting to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning. We started spinning up our models for our machine learning over 10 years ago. And time makes a difference. Time is a huge contributor to the efficacy of determinations. It's 2 components. You have to have tons of data, and you have to have time. The more data you can throw at those models to make them more effective, you just need more time to be able to keep on hammering those models with that data, and over time you're going to get more effective. And so the other thing that's very unique to Webroot, and this is where you're going to start to see that I guess, that defense in depth approach is it's the type of data that we're leveraging as well. The vast majority, I guess everybody else is using different technologies to identify whether a file is good or whether it's bad. They might be using older technologies like signature-based technologies, or they might be leveraging machine learning, but that's all the data that they're leveraging. Webroot incorporates a lot more data. So not only do we look at file reputation, we're looking at app reputation, we're looking at URL classification, we're looking at IP reputation. So we can take into consideration things like this. I'll give you a real-world example where a file gets introduced to a machine and it has some sketchy behaviors, which we were able to identify, but we're also able to take into, we look at the contextual relationships as well. So we're looking at, hey, where did this file come from? Did it come from an IP address that we know is a bit sketch, or we know it's a bad place, we know it's a place that hosts malware? And by the way, this file is actually trying to communicate out. Where is it trying to communicate out to? Is that communicating out to an IP address that we also know is bad? And we can leverage those contextual relationships to make more accurate determinations. That's why we're seeing efficacies as high as 99.41. We can actually measure our own efficacy because we're monitoring every single file that comes in. So if we actually miss something, we're going to know it. But the beauty of how fast we do it is, once that file gets introduced in that network and we're running through our behavior analysis and we're using all that contextual data, and we identify it as a threat, within 5 minutes we can actually protect everybody else in our entire environment, all the millions of endpoints that we have out there, against that same exact threat. And you might think, hey, well, okay, that's too bad for that one guy, though, that got it. He's the sacrificial lamb. We don't believe in the sacrificial lamb approach. We don't want that one guy to have to worry about it. So, that's, again, building those multiple layers, that defense in-depth approach. We're building in technologies to be able to roll that machine back to its pre-infected state in case we did miss something. So all the changes that file made, we can roll it back. So we alleviate that sacrificial lamb syndrome. So this is the beginning. So as we start to build out our solutions and we start to look at that defense in-depth approach and how to protect our customers, our SMBs, we want to make sure that we're incorporating as many layers as we can into as realistically as few solutions as we can. Make sure that you guys have the adequate coverage without having to spend a lot of resources to manage several different solutions. And so when we're looking to build out our platform, we're taking into consideration network protection, user protection, device protection. So that's where we start to stem out and build out our other solutions in the same platform. So having a security platform that's unified, that houses all of our solutions. So within that same platform, besides endpoint protection, we also have a DNS-based web filtering solution. Beyond that, we also have a security awareness training. So making sure we're covering those 4 core components. Talk about DNS a lot for a second here. DNS doesn't get a lot of coverage as far as a vulnerability. It's taken for granted quite often. I think people think, hey, I don't need a DNS-based web filtering solution. I have a firewall. That covers me just as well. But a firewall are just doors, right? They're either opening or closing doors. They're not actually inspecting those DNS requests that are coming through. And because of the lack of awareness about how these bad actors can start to leverage DNS, they're an ideal target for them. Just a few examples of how these bad actors can leverage DNS. One of the things they can start to do is build a secure connection to phone home back to their command and control sites, leveraging DNS, where they can actually get information, very specific information from machines, send that information back, operating systems and all the software that's on the machines, send that back to their command and control center where they can build a very specific package knowing all the exploits of that machine and deliver that back to that machine. We're seeing a technique called fragmentation where they can actually start to steal personal information, sensitive data, setting up DNS as spam relays. One of the things that's very common, the thing that's called cache poisoning. So wherever the DNS cache is hosted, whether it's on the router, is when the bad guys are actually poisoning this cache, is when your customers' users goes to www.google.com and they get redirected somewhere else. Those are some of the pieces. Those are some of the things that they're starting to leverage to take advantage of that DNS piece. And that's where you really need a DNS-based web filtering solution. Something like our solution that can prevent and look at all those prevent infections by automatically inspecting and securing that internet connection. So it's something that can actually watch all the inbound and outbound traffic to bypass anything that might be potentially poisoned, so any of those caches, because all the requests, those DNS requests are actually coming through our servers. So we're always going to be providing clean requests. But we can actually start to apply our threat intelligence against those requests as well. So again, that contextual relationship, the defense in depth, making sure that as someone puts that request in to go to the site, we can say, hey, we know that site is a bad site. We're going to block you from going there. To the point where we can actually block almost 90% of infections before it actually hits the endpoint. That kind of makes you wonder, like, hey, are we thinking about this wrong? Should maybe this be our number one layer that we should be thinking about? It's a debate, but it's definitely a very important layer to have. But aside from all the security aspect, there is obviously an HR and productivity perspective as well, where if you're managing schools and things like that, or just companies where you need to actually prevent exposure to things like porn, or if there's productivity issues where you can start building policies around securing folks from going to social networking sites, things like that. So obviously, multiple advantages to having our DNS solution as well. So on to the biggest vulnerability out there that exists, and that is the human. We kind of alluded to that in the beginning. The weakest link in the entire security chain. And this is where, if we were able to address this, and if everyone started to incorporate some kind of user training, education, we would see a dramatic decrease in malware infections. It's like we've got the stats, we know that it's effective. So when you start talking about protecting those 4 different cores, the people, network, data, and devices. It's that people piece, and that's probably the most important piece. Making sure that they're obviously well-trained and educated to protect all the other pieces, because they're literally the linchpin. So, if you look at the vast majority of malware infections, actually it's over 90%, they require some kind of user interaction. So you deploy out a security awareness training solution like Webroots, and you can start to see dramatic improvements over time. So when you talk about our security awareness solution, you're talking about 3 main components. You're talking about the main piece, which is our phishing simulator. So to be able to send out campaigns to different users to see and test them and see if they're actually clicking through on these links. We're seeing, we've had this solution out there for a couple years now, and we're seeing got some great stats coming back on this stuff. We're seeing that, when people are launching some of these initial campaigns, when they first get the solution, that the click-through rate is over 50%, between 50 to 60%. These guys are failing. They're falling for some of these phishing tests. But if the users, if the administrators are consistent in their testing and their training, so doing it monthly, over a 6-month period of time, we've seen that the behaviors, the click-through rates get down to less than 10%. Over a year, it gets closer to 5%. So a massive difference And if 90% of infections come from people, we can have a huge impact on protecting our customers just by educating them. So making sure that we have the templates that are, our guys here are constantly looking at all the templates that people are looking for, making sure that we're giving you guys a multitude of different things that you guys can leverage and test. But also the training courses. Obviously, you want to not just tell them that they failed, you want to train them not to do the wrong things. So making sure if they do fail, you can also automatically put them into training modules and these are very engaging, interactive trials that you're not going to want to fall asleep to, and they're not exceptionally long either, but very engaging, and they get right to the point. But to making sure that we're covering the compliance aspects as well. Like I said, SMBs they have to adhere to the compliance regulations just as much as the large enterprises do. So making sure that we're satisfying those regulations and providing those training courses to make sure that they're following what they need to do for PCI compliance or HIPAA or what have you. But you guys got to make sure that you're showing the value back to your customers as well. So making sure that you have good reporting. Say, hey, when we first started this is what you guys had, and look at the improvements we've had. Your infection rates have gone down. Your click-through rates have gone down. This is why you're paying me on a monthly basis to protect your users, and I can actually show you the value of the service that I provide. So we know what you guys are dealing with. We know that you guys might be security savvy. Some of you guys might be security experts, but you don't want to be. We understand that you want to make sure that you have all those layers of protection in those solutions, and it's easy to manage. And so that's why we've created this unified platform with all of our security solutions in it, so you guys can manage all of your sites in a multi-tenant fashion, site-by-site administration, and you can start putting out policies at a global level, at a site level, at a group level, or an individual level, and to make sure that you're managing and protecting your customers without having to spend all day doing it. So you guys can get on to doing much more strategic things. And with that, I am going to pass it off to my counterpart, and Jamie is going to cover the resiliency piece. Jamie?
Hey, thanks, Tim. I think that was a lot of good information about how to prevent and protect your business from getting attacked. And I think in addition to looking at how SMBs are becoming a bigger and bigger target in the for hackers and for these bad actors, I think another way to look at this is also what they're trying to go and get. So a lot of the kind of bad cybersecurity professionals, the bad actors out there, have really shifted from trying to just cause disruption in the world to actually trying to make money. And there's a couple of ways that they've figured out how to make money with their technology, with their exploits and with their malware and such. And a lot of it really has to do with going after the data on the machine. And this kind of comes in a couple of fashions. One is certainly if they can get a hold of valuable data, a spreadsheet of usernames or a database of all your customers, they can sell that. Certainly if they have even more important information as far as personal health information, credit card numbers, really valuable stuff that's even, they can sell it at a higher rate. Or if it's really targeted information about, high net worth individuals or such. But another really common technique is, I think we've all heard about ransomware, is that they've realized that if they just encrypt all the data on your machine and make you pay ransom, that a lot of people will just pay the ransom. And I think that's actually proof in, another kind of common saying, which is that a business, one of the most important assets, the most valuable assets in a business, small or large, is the data that they have. It's your customer list. It's how you're contacting them. It's your invoice records. It's the intellectual property that your employees are developing and generating, every day when they come to the office or when they work remotely. And so I think the industry has kind of proven, whether you look at it from a positive perspective that people are generating good and important data and work, or whether you look at it from that negative perspective that the bad actors have literally been able to create businesses around exfiltrating your data or holding it ransom. that data is really important. And so, what I always look at when we talk about having this multi-layered security approach to protecting your business is kind of looking at the bottom layer and saying, okay, well, Tim talked about, having defense in depth and having multiple layers. But at the end of the day, there's still always the chance that something gets through. And so, having a protection for your data, having a comprehensive backup solution in place is ultimately the way that you protect your business from not having to pay those ransoms, or, from being able to get out of one of these places that you can get put in. So what we offer, in addition to, the protection side, is kind of a different array of data protection solutions and backup and recovery capabilities to meet the needs. So, if everybody, had it their way, all of the data that we all produce would be synchronized to, 5 different geographies and encrypted 8 times over and highly available, and I'd have a local copy and a cloud copy, right? Everything would be highly available and redundant. But it's also not practical to always have that in place, right? You need to look at kind of the usability and the network efficiency of these. And so where the Carbonite solutions really come into play is trying to match the different needs and capabilities that you have for different types of data with the right level of protection for them. So we offer everything from kind of long-term backup retention to meet compliance needs. If you need a 3 or a 7-year retention scheme on all of the data that you're generating, or if you need a legal hold capability to deal with any potential litigation that you might encounter, to having actually really fast and real-time or near real-time recovery mechanisms available locally or in the cloud for your data as well. So really, no matter what happens, whether it's a cybersecurity attack, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's an accidental or malicious employee deletion or an insider attack, or if it's just something such as a loss or theft of a device, that you're able to recover from that in a really quick manner and get back up and running. So I'll walk you through a few of these different solutions that we offer. And again, I'll just remind everyone that you can ask any questions that you want through the Q&A box, and we'll take those at the end as well. So the first one we'll talk about is on the endpoint. So the endpoints have become, kind of a really targeted spot for malware and for viruses to try to get onto the device, right? This is where the users are working every day. They're on the web. They're clicking links in their email. They're doing all those things that the security awareness training is trying to teach them not to do. But so it's a really kind of good place for someone to try to focus on infiltrating is through the endpoint. And so protecting that data there becomes more and more important. A lot of infections start from the endpoint and then can become more pervasive throughout the network, especially if you have different devices on that network. And so protecting the data on the endpoint itself becomes really important. The other thing that we find is that a lot of people have also started to use Office 365 for creating content natively in the cloud, or syncing and sharing documents across an organization, or even using some of the more advanced productivity tools that Microsoft offers. So collaboration through Teams, or utilizing planner boards and Project Online to kind of coordinate large-scale team projects or complicated projects. And Microsoft has built some amazing tools and some amazing collaboration, even the ability to collaborate across organizations and companies. And what that means is that in today's world, the data is really split. There's a significant portion of the data that people are still creating and generating locally on their devices. But there's also a lot of content that's being created and stored natively in the cloud. And it's important for MSPs and for partners to look at and say, well, as I've moved my customers to Office 365, how am I protecting that data? It's really easy to say it's in the cloud and Microsoft has that taken care of. But you have to remember, Microsoft does not know the difference between an end user intentionally deleting a file because it no longer has business purpose, or a malicious insider deleting files and deleting backups of files and emptying their recycle bin or their trash can because they're trying to either get away with something nefarious or they're trying to cause harm, right? We've all heard about the disgruntled employee who kind of takes things down on their way out, right? You've got to remove their ability to RM-RF the entire server. But you need to be able to do the same things in the cloud as well and prevent that. And so whether you're using Office 365 or whether you're just using endpoint devices, or more commonly you're using both, it's really critical and important that that data gets protected and backed up in a really simple way. The other thing is that there is still a lot of data, whether it's line of business applications that people are running, or whether it's file servers or other things where you're running local servers or even cloud-based servers. Maybe you're using EC2 instances in AWS or VMs in Azure, but you're running a server on the infrastructure that you need to protect. And so we do offer a large array of different capabilities for servers. We have everything from on-site local backup using an appliance to the ability to spin up on the appliance or to be able to fail over to the cloud. And we do offer some kind of really advanced capabilities. So a lot of other people in the industry, when they come to recovery, they offer pretty limited options. With Carbonite, you can restore from the appliance, you can restore from the cloud, you can run in our cloud in a multi-server environment, so not just a single VM in the cloud, but really looking at an entire application that might have a database and a web server and an Active Directory domain, and kind of piecing that all together so you can have a kind of true network in the cloud and a true extension of your network into our cloud for failover capabilities as required. We do wrap all of this up into a subscription, so you can even get things like the appliance and the hardware that you're going to put on site for some customers as part of an overall subscription package. So you don't have to kind of have that upfront CapEx expenditure to buy an appliance. You can do everything on a monthly payment plan as well, which can be really handy for a lot of customers, especially for small businesses where some cash flow of your customers might be a concern. So a lot of options there for you to take advantage of. And then the last solution that I'll mention here is a little bit different than pure backup. But one of the things that we find as being really common that needs to be done in a secure manner is how do I actually migrate data from one server to another? And this comes up in a few fashions. So this could be a forklift upgrade at a customer site where they're going to finally get off some physical servers and move to a virtualization platform. Or it could be customers that are going to move to the cloud and kind of get rid of any on-prem infrastructure. Or even as an MSP, you might onboard customers who have some old infrastructure running locally or something that maybe a previous MSP was maintaining, and you want to bring that into your own cloud. And so we do offer the solution Carbonite Migrate, which is a real-time replication engine. So you install it on the agent on the machine that you want to migrate. And in real time, every time something is committed to disk, it will also replicate that to the destination. Again, whether that's public cloud, a virtual platform, a physical platform, your cloud, wherever you're going. And what that means is that when it's time to actually migrate, you can have a near zero downtime cutover. So as opposed to having to take servers offline for days or hours, or really even give up your own nights and weekends to try to minimize disruption on your customers, you can utilize this tool and do a cutover from a source server to a destination server in really just a few minutes of time. So it's a super easy solution. It doesn't require that you know and understand even the underlying applications. You can do a forklift upgrade of it, and you can get it from anywhere to anywhere. So we don't offer any kind of requirements or lock-in as far as platforms. So you can literally go from on-premise to cloud, from cloud to on-premise, from one cloud provider to another cloud provider, physical to virtual, virtual to physical. Any of these different scenarios all work seamlessly with the platform. So it's really kind of a Swiss Army knife depending on what you need to do or what environment you find in your customer's environment. So like I said, there's a lot of reasons why you really need to think about the data and think about the protection and what's happening. It's not just around a cybersecurity threat. That's certainly one, and that's certainly an important one to think about. But there's a lot of other scenarios. What happens if somebody gets, a privilege escalation and gets access to the admin credentials? They can wreak havoc on a server or on an endpoint or on your Office 365 environment. What if it's a malicious employee or a malicious, bad actor doing this? Frankly, what if someone wrote their password on a Post-it, right, and they left it at Starbucks? There's a lot of really kind of simple things and simple mistakes that people can do that can really lead to bad things happening on your network, and you need to be prepared and able to recover from that. So having the data protection in place, is kind of a simple solution to having a lot of kind of tools in your tool chest to be able to recover, get the business back up and running, and not have to give them the bad news that you can't quite get their data back. And I do think it's also important to look at this not just on the servers that live in the infrastructure, but on the cloud-based infrastructure, on the endpoints, and everything else that they have running as well. So hopefully you guys typed in a lot of good questions as Tim and I were going through this, and I will hand it back over for some of those questions to be asked.
Wonderful, Tim, Jamie, good stuff. Thank you very much. So we've got a couple of questions that have already come into the Q&A box. Again, if you guys in the audience have any questions, by all means, stick those into the Q&A box. We'll be trying to get through as many of those as we can within the next 10 minutes or so. First question comes in here. It looks like all your security solutions are built into one platform, which is great. I presume they're separate products that you pay for, and they're wondering how would the billing work for an MSP?
I can take that one. So great question. So yeah, they are absolutely separate solutions. So if you look at endpoint security, if you look at DNS protection, if you look at security awareness training, they are three separate solutions that you pay for, all built into that unified platform. As far as billing goes, we understand what the managed service provider needs. So we have very flexible billing models. So we allow for our MSPs, depending on what routes they decide to purchase, the vast majority of routes we allow for monthly billing, and it's based on how much you actually use. All right, so if and it doesn't have to be 1,000 endpoints and 1,000 DNS agents. It can be 1,000 endpoints. It could be 500 DNS. It could be 100 security awareness trainings. So we make it a very flexible model, and we only bill you for what you guys use.
Good answer there as well. Eric's asking, what distributors can I purchase Carbonite licenses for our MSP customers from?
I could probably take that one as well. So assuming Carbonite, you're talking about both the Webroot and Carbonite pieces together. And so right now we are in the process. Obviously Webroot has become a Carbonite company this year, and so we're in the process of consolidating a lot of our channels. The good news is that there's a lot of overlap already that exists. So in the traditional channels, we do have Tech Data and Synnex that both of our solutions are available through. We do also have, on the security side through the Webroot pieces, we're partnered with quite a few RMM partners out there. So if you're leveraging some kind of RMM solution out there, the vast majority of them have integrations and also have the ability to procure our solutions through. We're working on incorporating some of those Carbonite pieces with those partners, so we're not quite there yet, but look for that pretty soon. But we also, with our MSP partners, we also work direct as well. So we're trying to give you guys as many options as you guys need to be able to purchase.
Perfect. Good answer there. Another question here. You had mentioned defense in depth, Tim, during your presentation. The question came in, how does your defense in depth approach handle ransomware with your technology?
I love this question. This is awesome. Okay, let's do a real world example. This is cool, but you got to follow along with me. All right, so Nick talked about layers. We talked about defense in depth as being layers, and with managed service providers, you're trying to get as many layers as you can and as few solutions as possible. And so let's use a real world example where one of your customers, your end users, actually gets a phishing email, right? And within that phishing email is a link to a site that's going to get him some ransomware, right? So the first thing that we're doing in this whole defense in depth process is when that user clicks on that link to that malicious site, the first thing we're going to do is say, hey, we know this IP address is bad. We're going to block him from going there so he can never actually get infected in the first place. All right? That's the first piece. But we know in reality that a lot of these phishing sites get spun up for a day or so, or maybe just even a few hours. So we may not know the IP address. That's where we actually have a technology called real-time anti-phishing, where when that user clicks on that link, we'll jump ahead and pre-scan that site, and with 99% accuracy, we'll be able to say, hey, we know this has all the attributes of a phishing site. We're going to block you from going there. But that may not always work as well. So if we fail and that payload actually comes down to that machine, we're going to say, hey, we know this file. We already have a reputation for it. We're going to block it. Okay? Well, if we don't know it there. If we don't know it there, then we're going to run through our behavior analysis. So we're going to do a pre-execution analysis, look at all the behaviors of it, send it back to our cloud, see if it matches any known bad behaviors that we've run through our artificial intelligence and machine learning for all those years. If it comes back and we know it's bad, we're going to block it. But if we fail there, then we actually have built into the endpoint security solution a feature called journaling and rollback, where once we identify that threat was bad or that file was a threat, we can roll back all those changes back to its pre-infected state. We fail there, then you go to the Carbonite piece, and that's your get out of jail free card. So you're going to have the access to your backup complete and very quickly. So, like, I love that question, but that really shows all those the layers that you're talking about in that defense and depth approach.
Yeah, ransomware is actually very, very complex in its execution in terms of getting into the organization in the first place, moving laterally within the organization as well. So there's quite a bit involved there. You had mentioned you had mentioned Wi-Fi security. So Eric's asking about is the Wi-Fi security similar to, and they mentioned Norton's VPN module, which I'm not familiar with, but I thought I'd throw that your way. It's one of the last questions we have in the Q&A.
Yeah, I don't know. I could take this one unless you want to jump in there, Jamie. Yeah, I'm familiar with Norton's VPN module. Yeah, so the idea is when you're at Starbucks or in any open Wi-Fi scenario, those connections are not secure at all. We know that that's now a big target for the bad guys out there, and so to be able to create an encrypted tunnel and making sure that wherever you're surfing to, whatever bad actors are trying to view that stream of data, they can't see it because it's encrypted. So yes, very similar technologies. I highly recommend if you're out there, make sure you're tunneling those connections. Make sure, because you're really relying on, potentially a mom and pop coffee shop to secure their Wi-Fi connection, so it's not been compromised and leveraged into bad actor can use.
It looks like we have no more questions that have come in here, so I think we'll go ahead and let the kids out of class a little early today, I guess the case would be. So Tim and Jamie, thank you very much for your presentations. Really good information you provided, so I appreciate that, you guys. Those in the audience, thanks for your attendance as well. And with that, I will hand things back to Jen to close us out. Jen, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Before we go, we'd like to thank Carbonite again for sponsoring today's event, as well as Tim, Jamie, and yourself, Nick, for this informative discussion. Just a reminder to the audience, this web seminar will be available on demand starting tomorrow, so please feel free to come back and review. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for attending.